be excited. You guys should be like doing handstands and jumping jacks. This is the last you're going to hear from me today. Well, maybe not the last you're going to hear from me, but the last I'll be presenting. So. Okay, so the next one's on pest control, building maintenance, and visitor. Do you have a question? Okay. And I alluded to it yesterday, and you might think, well, how are those related? We will talk about them, and they do actually become a little bit related, especially when we talk about buildings and pest control. Visitors aren't considered pests, but there is actually that potential for cross-contamination, so that's what we're always keeping in the back of our mind. So again, the usual risks, gaps, and some training. So there is that risk, obviously, of food contamination. If there's pests present, for obvious reasons, because they aren't typically the most clean, and they leave their droppings behind, and especially when we're looking at rodents and stuff like that. So there's a little bit less control there when it comes to that type. When we have buildings that aren't properly maintained or sound, gaping holes, structures that not only on the interior can pose a risk to our product, just as Katija mentioned yesterday, we'll get into a little bit, if it's shown that equipment's rusted or paint's peeling, that's an issue. But then when it comes to the holes and sort of exposure to the exterior environment, then you have that risk of pests coming in and seeking garbage in that facility. That creates another risk. And then with visitors, when you have that access to production areas, then there's the risk again for potential contamination. So I am going to flip through this fairly quickly. It's not rocket science, but there are some key things that we need to identify, especially if we're looking at following specific requirements under our food safety program manual. So some of them I just go through quickly. Obviously, these are what we're typically think of when we think of pests on the farm, but often we forget about our lovely friends as well, our family pets. So we do need to consider these, especially when we're looking at food production areas specifically, so or where there might be a final product. So that could be in the harvest, like during harvest in that production field, might be in the buildings, or even if you have like a farm gate, farm market, you would really want to restrict your family pets from those areas as well. Why are obviously the pests coming into why are they interested in this? Obviously, they have needs, and usually food production environments service those needs. They want shelter, food, protection. They get all of that when they're in and around those facilities. Pests can contaminate the product, obviously through direct contact, but often it's through that cross-contamination. If the feces or the urine has contaminated the surface area or product or packaging material, then that's when we're going to see a risk. And you can't see bacteria or parasites with the naked eye, so it's just if you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So you really got to be cognizant that if you see any evidence of pests or that there is a really good chance that there could be some contamination there. We've already visited this slide before, so we don't need to go through that. So when we talk about our production areas, that can be both in the field and in the building. So for the field, when we talk about where pests and animals can contaminate our product, or maybe those areas that we would be using for our products, so that would be your water sources. Obviously, that's a huge concern. We've talked about that in different various ways, whether it be wildlife or livestock, having access to those areas where then we're going to be irrigating our crop. And I just had that friendly reminder about that spinach recall. That was because there is excessive fecal contamination in surface water that was used for irrigation that caused that massive outbreak. So in the field, again, we're thinking about what will come in contact, and it's the feces, the urine, even bodily fluids. Sometimes just that direct contact, or if there's other sort of fluids that those can contaminate the product. The biggest one usually in this type of situation is the transferring from one pathogens from one area to another. I have this picture included here, not to say that all strawberries are contaminated with manure, that's not what I'm saying, but insects can be a kind of a big role in transferring that because, you know, they are attracted to manure piles, and then if you have a manure pile very close by, then there's a greater chance that you can have an influx of insects in that landing on your product. I know, don't shoot the messenger, but it's just, again, identifying those risks. So if you have an opportunity to house a manure pile further away that you can, that's great. Or if you have a farm gate stand, again, try and keep them segregated so that you're reducing that risk. Flies can fly up to, I think it's 7 miles, so I'm not suggesting that you do that, but it's just, you're gonna have a higher influx if you have those things in close proximity of each other. Field crops, again, we talked about at the very beginning yesterday, you know, that shift in healthy eating, people consuming more fresh fruits and vegetables. Field crops and those fresh products are more vulnerable and susceptible to contamination from the environment because, you know, those things can readily adhere, and because they're often eaten fresh or maybe not cooked as much as some other products might be. So if they are contaminated, then there's a greater risk there. And pathogens, if a product becomes wounded, say if it's bruised or like cut or chafed, any of those things, or even the plant itself, pathogens can find their way in that way as well and contaminate the product or the plant or what it might be. So again, it's just trying to prevent it, and then we're all in a better place. Once a product, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, when a product becomes contaminated or gets contaminated, it is very difficult to wash and to remove all of that contamination. Yes, some sanitizers or different types of treatment process might help in that, but to say that it would effectively reduce it completely, that's not the case. So again, prevention is the key. When we move into the production buildings, there's a few things to think about, and it's, again, the soundness of the building as far as the exposure to the external environment, but there's also what's happening within the building. So when we talk about things, when we're starting to look at things within the building, and when I say surrounding environment, that's sort of like your production environment. You know, things to think about are the floors, the rafters, the equipment that you're using, the storage areas. And another one that often gets forgotten about is where we're storing our packaging material or our harvest bins. Because again, those are considered final product bins, and they need to be protected and kept sort of free from contamination as well. Because again, you can do all this work keeping your product safe, and then if your packaging material is just gross and dirty and soiled with, stuff, we'll just say, then it's all for nothing and you have a greater risk. Yes, ma'am?
This is where it might seem minute, but my husband has a real big issue with this, because when you're harvesting cabbage or big vegetables like that, they're kept in those wooden bins.
Yep.
And they're stored in wooden bins. Well, I'm pretty sure none of us can afford to house all our wooden bins. You know, when they're empty, we store them outside. So he said to me, well, what would you like me to do? Like, I don't know, like it's a real big issue. Like even with, you know, we're driving tractors in and out of the barn where the cabbage is capped. And if I walk around those areas, I think gap and I think nuts. Like because birds fly in there, and we do put netting up for them. But we have 4 cats on our property, and without those cats, I'm almost guaranteed we would have an overwhelming rodent problem. You can put as much bait down as you want and all that other stuff, but the best protection is our cats. They like mice. So I don't know, like, what would you say if you walked in and you saw, like, they're not necessarily in the barn. Very rarely ever do you see a cat in the barn, because they don't like to be trapped when the doors are closed. Right.
I'll let you answer.
Yeah. So I would have cats running around the yard is one thing. I would probably start asking questions though. If the cats go in the barn, look for evidence of the cats in the barn. I know realistically the rats are bigger and mice are a bigger hazard than the cats are. It's a couple of points up. If there's cats and so on, it's bigger problems if I see rodents or evidence of rodents.
But we still have traps in the barn.
Yeah.
But my husband says, we're not getting rid of the cats or else we're going to have a rodent problem.
Right.
And it is an old mindset too. It truly is. But
It's better to not have them, absolutely. And if you do have them, keep them outside the barn as much as possible. If they're outside in the air, that's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they are. I've never once seen them in the barn.
Okay, well, then
Yeah.
that's good.
Or like even the production areas, I mean, I
Yes.
realize they might be in other barns maybe, but like ideally, like the production areas.
Anywhere where there's
They're all
product or
production.
packaging.
Like everything we own is a production area, if you think about where, because isn't that a production area where you're storing cabbage?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, so anywhere where there's fresh product or packaging material that product's gonna go into.
So we look for, and for the birds again, a bird flying in and out, because we know that a lot of people keep their doors open when they're processing, because they have lots of, wagons coming in, wagons coming out, people
Fresh
coming
air.
out. Yeah, and that's okay, as long as, again, you can close up at night.
Yeah.
And that if you're looking for bird problems, if you've got a bird problem where they're nesting and roosting, then you do something about it, put up a netting.
Yeah.
One bird flying in and out is not the issue, it's the birds who have their nest there, but sitting in one place, and they're pooping all over the floor when it's going through. And then also you have you're sorting, grading, inspecting, you're looking at your boxes before they're using, so there's that extra risk in case there's that one incident where the bird comes in, poops on something. Well, you have
And you're
systems
training
in place, you train your employees to make sure that you identify that and then you corrective measure if that happens.
What if there was a worming program for your cats? If it's all record keeping, and you say that your cats were, vaccinated, or if there was a worming program to mitigate that risk, would that be not the gaining points then to have cats? Or does common sense come back into it?
Again, there's the point, but then it's like, okay, you teach your cats to wash their paws before they go and they're gonna climb up on the equipment. It's like how, you know what I mean? So
What about barn swallows and stuff like that?
again, exactly, you get to a point where are they in contact with food contact surfaces and equipment? So if the cats can be jumping on the packaging, are they going to be jumping on the packing equipment? Same with the barn swallow, are they going to be roosting over your packing equipment? Or is it just they fly in, freak out, and fly out? And so that they get caught inside someone actually.
So you're preferring that everything is medically sealed?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if it's open and the barn swallow flies in, that's not a big deal.
The barn swallows nest in barns, that's why they're called that.
Fair enough. Well then if you, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little upset here. This is way over the top and not practical.
Well, I understand.
It's not a farm.
No,
It's not a farm. You
that's how my
you're
husband,
ending up with sterile food.
no, that's how my husband is, but what we have done is we did put the netting inside over where we pack the cabbage and stuff, and the coolers are pretty much sealed all the time.
Right.
But, so my issue was I had a lot of the cardboard boxes we used to pack our cabbage in, stored in an open shed all the time. So we just got some tarps, and when they came in, we put the tarps over, so at least when the cats do jump up there, they're not jumping right on the product. So I have honestly have felt like the Gap people have been really cooperative, but it is, like you said, I wouldn't want to see poop all over a building that I was storing my food in. So,
Well, yeah,
If you have bird crap on the floor in the barn where you have packaging and product, like really, you're gonna pack food in there? I don't think so. I'm not saying that you're gonna kill all the birds. If you can't get these barn swallows out of your barn, find a place to store your product. And
I'm sorry I said anything.
I don't want to get an argument about this. I completely disagree.
It's just not, it's not farm-based. This whole Gap thing is not farm-based.
That's
It's
fair.
industry.
That's fine.
Sorry, I did have one question. If you were to say not in a room like you were mentioning to me,
Yeah.
keep all your crates inside all the time. If you were to have a system where you power wash these crates outside and then, I don't know, maybe sanitize them before you use them, is that?
well, we can't sanitize a wooden bin,
No, you
but what we can do look for is broken bins, and my husband refuses to, like you said, pressure wash them, so we do look to make sure that they're not filthy. When we store our cabbage in there, that's really not the final place for it, because you clean the relief and put it into market-ready products, so, there's a bit of,
And the wooden bins, I mean, the handicap allows for them to be stored outside again.
Yeah.
You're inspecting them before use to make sure that there's not, raccoons living in it
Right.
over the winter or whatever.
Thank you.
but I'm wondering, do you have to have a certain distance from your packaging place to livestock?
There's no minimum distance, but you would consider, again, is there potential, like, are they closing the building, is there potential for wind drift or, I guess, like exhaust from livestock areas getting into where the packaging is? You know what I mean? So,
Or an incline, right?
Yeah.
Like, that would be a big risk, right? If all the runoff from that field is always kind of going at the entranceway of your facility, or seeping into your facility, then that would not be ideal.
I just have a paddock close to where we do it, and my horses can come right up, there's a big gate there.
I wouldn't say it's like automatically a problem. I've seen other places where it's, again, barns, there's a hog barn here, and then there's a driveway, and then, you know, another packaging barn here. There's no issues with water dribbling down. Again, it's just the issue that people going back and forth and just making sure that they're not trafficking in anything from the paddock into the packaging.
And if you happen to have doors that face maybe that area, that, you know, your workers are trained that, especially when we're not in high traffic time, that we keep them closed at all times. Again, just to try and help with some of that those other things. So, I know it's tough, and again, you gotta take it back to what's practical, but still try and meet the requirements as best as possible, but you gotta look at what your operation is, and what's gonna be practical for you to do. And if cats, I'm not saying that, you know, everyone should have cats, and I understand